Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the final session of the fourth Climate Europe 2 Webstival on the role of climate services in cities. So over the past day and a half, we've explored key themes shaping the future of climate services, examining their growing influence in urban planning, policymaking, and sectoral decision-making. We've discussed how cities are leveraging climate services for both adaptation and mitigation, the role of national and EU initiatives in supporting their development, and the pressing need for standardization to ensure their usability. In addition, we have delved into cutting-edge innovations such as the climate digital twin, which has the potential to transform climate risk modeling and forecasting, as well as the fundamental issue of equity, ensuring that climate services are accessible, inclusive, and relevant to all stakeholders, from local communities to decision makers and everything in between. So this Webstival has provided a space, we think, to really reflect on these challenges and opportunities, strengthening our collective understanding on how to advance climate services in practice and feed into ultimately the standardization and governance of climate services going forward. This final session is an opportunity to reflect on the key insights gained, discuss some next steps in our project, Climate Europe 2, and gather your feedback to inform future Climate Europe 2 activities. Okay, so to start, we'll hear some brief recaps from our session organizers, who will provide a short summary of the key insights from their respective sessions. So, Asun, I believe you will start us off. Are you able to do that?
Yes, I am, Sam. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's recap. How did we start it yesterday morning? So first, obviously, Paco Doblas offered a summary of the project objectives of Climate Europe 2, but perhaps more importantly, he actually gave a brief summary on the importance of this engagement, the engagement with the community, and how Climate Europe 2 really cannot function without harvesting from all of you, without having these dialogues and getting the type of information that we need to do our work, but also the opportunity to benchmark what we have learned so far with the community. I myself also gave a very brief presentation of the key messages that the project has produced. You find this in the agenda at the end, and primarily this year they were focused on providing recommendations for standardization to start thinking, how can we standardize climate services? What should we say to the community? What are the warnings? What are the limitations also on doing that? And again, the important thing is to listen to the real world. So the first panel, which had a combination of science, public and technology provider, hybrid participation, sort of opened the debate that has run through yesterday and today about the links between mitigation and adaptation, and about the importance and the role that climate services may have in linking these two key activities within the context of cities. So here we heard the science perspective presented by IPCC authors engaged in the synthesis report of the sixth assessment with Anna Sorensen and also Paco Doblas himself, really giving concrete examples on exactly where these links between mitigation and adaptation are. So, for example, in topics such as renewable energy, or in topics such as land, water, and the food sector, where you have examples of, for example, in this latter, how ecosystem restoration can be an activity that has these co-benefits, both for adapting, for providing resilience, but also for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Or the example of renewable energy, where we see how renewable energy efficiency in domestic residences not only reduces emissions, but also at the same time can be a protection against extremes such as heat waves. So climate services are not only for the future, and I think this is a key message of this Webstival, but also for planning and guiding this co-benefit approach and to integrate the methodologies that are proper of climate services are also very similar to those that are being used by people working on mitigation. We heard very wonderful example of the broad expertise that the city of Oslo has in actually implementing substantive climate policy through an opportunity through the possibility to actually have a large coalition at a city level with a very strong green agenda. And we heard not only this link between adaptation and mitigation and concrete examples, but perhaps most importantly for the topic of climate services, the central role that the Office for Climate Services has had in the success and in the implementation of these measures. We also heard the importance of not only leadership and governance, but also cross-sectoral work, the importance of making sure that there is cross-sectoral work, and the importance of making sure that this knowledge that comes from a national climate services center needs to be integrated into the actual core policymaking at the city level, which in the case of Oslo was done through the use of the city budgeting and the budget for there. So this leadership supported by a science, and I think that throughout the 2 days, those are topics that have been repeated, was also complemented by the perspective of technology providers really providing climate solutions at the city level. We had the representative of Vito. And here what we heard is the importance of not only the access to high quality data, and the importance of making sure that there is capabilities to actually handle that climate data and information, but the central necessity of co-production, of engagement with users, of thinking about the capacity at the multiple layers of the city that people need to have to handle the information provided by climate services. Questions related to evaluation and broad consultation, including a central focus on citizen participation. So we again heard a topic that is important in this project, which is the limits of just having data, because we need this other side of the knowledge that situates into particular decision-making context. And just to conclude, we had a long and wonderful conversation. I encourage all of you to listen to the recordings that will be made available later on. But perhaps let me pick up some on two quick topics. One is that obviously knowledge and resources are limited, and there might be conflicts between the efforts for adaptation and the efforts for mitigation. So perhaps the lesson, I think, for all of us is to actually look for those synergies where climate services can facilitate, can create efficiencies. And I think the point about how the methodologies that we use in climate services are very similar to those that are being used in many mitigation and net zero strategy actions is just one point to further explore. We also discussed how it seems, and it is a lot of evidence across Europe, although it's uneven between, let's say, Scandinavia and the Mediterranean, Southern European countries, that market forces tend to be much more invested into pushing for mitigation strategies, forgetting the importance of adaptation. So I think, how can we ensure that through the thinking of the governance of climate services can include this aspect of generating co-benefits between adaptation and mitigation is important. And also, I think that another point that I wanted to emphasize in this opening discussion that I have also heard has come up in other panels is the importance to support, because we have been primarily discussing public climate services here for public purposes and primarily for citizens. So the importance of ensuring that there is a support system, economic, research, and also governance for a proper system of public climate services, and that emphasizes capacities, capabilities, capability to use besides availability. And also the importance of interpreting the limits that the climate data and information may have in order to make decisions and to be able to build capacity in these public climate services systems to ensure that it is cross-referenced with this richness of contextual, local type of information with social issues. And this leads me back to the importance of having a holistic view of climate services and not a technocratic view of climate services. I leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks so much for some, yeah, lots of food for thought, I think, from that discussion and that session. Great way, I think it was to start the Websterval. Okay, so next, Julia Rawlins from ICLE Europe will share some key takeaways from session 2, which involved another panel discussion on the current and potential roles of climate services in cities. So over to you, Julia.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And thanks for taking notes whilst I was moderating this. Appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure. And yeah, I'm representing Net Zero Cities, which is the implementation platform for the climate neutral and smart cities mission. And this session was co-organized by Climate Europe 2 and Net Zero Cities, and was looking at the work of both missions, the cities mission and the adaptation mission. So some of the key questions that we focused on were: how are climate services currently supporting urban decision making? And we looked at some of the challenges cities are facing in accessing and integrating climate data. And then we also looked at the impact of standardization. And we had 6 panelists. We had 2 from the European Commission, DG RTD, representing both the cities mission and the adaptation mission. And they highlighted how they're really focusing on connecting both of these missions. As we can see, cities are integrating adaptation and climate neutrality on the ground, and that needs to be reflected at different levels of governance. We also had Monica Haider, a colleague from ICLE Europe, who outlined the role of standardization, also the potential for standardization to help cities in their transition to climate neutrality and more resilience. And then we had 3 wonderful panelists from mission cities, Rome, Thessaloniki, and Valencia. So we tried to understand a little bit about how cities are using climate services currently on the ground. And we heard about how important climate services are for the prioritization of climate action in cities. So when cities are deciding on where to develop specific climate actions, they really need to draw on the latest research and science. They need to understand how many actions are needed to be implemented, what the outcomes and co-benefits might be, for example, around health and quality of life. Important is to focus also on the cost of those actions, but also the cost of inaction, how to measure and calculate this. They need to look at how many people are exposed to certain climate impacts, for example, the number of schools and the number of hospitals. They need to plan ahead and understand how climate action will be affected in the future. So there are many, many issues here that require support from climate services. And we heard that actually some simplification would also be helpful here, and integration, a word that we've already heard from Asun, came up a number of times. How do we integrate not just mitigation and adaptation actions, but also all the various types of data that are available to cities? Looking at some of the key challenges facing cities in this context, we heard about the complexity of climate data and the challenge of translating scientific data into actionable policies. This is linked to the technical capacity in cities, having the expertise in-house to be able to translate the data into the local context is a significant issue. Also, the fragmentation of data sources, and there's a lot of technical data, but also socioeconomic data, infrastructure data. this needs to be analyzed and synthesized in ways that often is not so easy in the city itself. We also heard about barriers to mitigation efforts. So climate services are widely used, or more widely used, for adaptation, but it seems that they are at the moment underutilized when it comes to climate neutrality and mitigation actions. And Asun also highlighted the point around procurement challenges. When cities are trying to acquire climate services, there can be quite complex and bureaucratic procurement procedures, particularly if services would be coming from private providers. I'll stop there and move on to standardization and the advantages that cities can see having a greater emphasis on standardization of climate services. So this can really help cities avoid redundant tool development and save them time and money if there is a simplified, standardized provision of services. Standardization does ensure comparability and a consistency around climate-related decisions. It can facilitate the replication of already successful strategies. Cities learn very effectively from each other. So what's working in one place can often be replicated and used in other places. Interoperability came up of technical solutions and planning frameworks, and also knowledge valorization. There are many, many EU programs producing and generating knowledge, tools, and resources. How can cities access that in a more simplified way? Just to wrap up, I think one of the takeaways was that climate services can be expanded more to mitigation, but guidance is needed around this. And overall, there's a need for standardization, integration, and accessible climate services to support evidence-based policymaking. So I think I'll leave it there for now. Thanks very much,
Yeah,
Sam.
no, that's great. Thanks so much, Julia. Yeah, it really felt like that discussion was very rich, and it was great to hear, about all the different contexts in the different cities, and like I say, the very specific challenges that they're having to deal with when it comes to sort of sourcing and using knowledge and services for various activities in city governments. So yeah, thank you, Julia. Now we're going to move on to session 3. So Andreas Philvok from GEREX will now walk us through insights from session 3, which showcased several new EU and national level projects and initiatives related to climate services. So over to you, Andreas.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. And yeah, we are somehow building on this session too, but focus here on a bunch of new EU projects and national activities in the context of urban areas. So the session was split somehow in a panel discussion where we had, first of all, a couple of initiatives, in particular from Southeastern Europe, with Roxana Boy from Bucharest, who presented two new projects on which are in particular involving people in the city of Bucharest in climate adaptation efforts, the regeneration project and the Orbact project, which are both aiming to really interact locally with the people in the city of Bucharest to design and implement adaptation measures, nature-based solutions for climate adaptation. Following on, Biljana Bazrin from Novi Sad highlighted the Clear Climate project, where they are really trying to build theoretical and practical skills in the area of climate information and change. And she emphasized that, in particular in their area, the problem of climate change is often not as well known and in the heads of the people. So there is a lot of say groundwork needed to also to focusing awareness on climate change issues. The last speaker in that in that panel discussion was Georgios Silaos from northern Greece. Sorry, I misspelled this a little bit. Who presented with Desiremet, another nature-based solution project, which is not only focusing on, say, cities, but also on rural areas, but really closely working with the local stakeholders in implementing nature-based solutions for climate adaptation. Here in particular in the demonstrator area in northeastern Greece. Then we followed up with new projects presented from Lua Gil and Hans van Leeuwen on the PCPYs, which is somehow a follow-on on the Protect project. And here the focus is on water management, which has also focus on not only on cities, but on water management has a lot of the sets on flooding as well as drought and water supply in various areas. This was followed on by a new initiative that is led by Wageningen University. Luden Kramer presented here using the EnviMets software, high-resolution software to design greening of multifunctional walls in Amsterdam as a very nice application in cities to adapt to overheating of certain areas in the city on a very local scale. Then Chiara Bernardini from Jerix presented the, say, broad suite of climate services that Jerix is offering and implementing, working with cities in Germany, in Europe, and beyond. From toolkits which are individual adapted for the needs of the cities, and then also a very high resolution modeling of say flood risk with the Pond4U tool, other participatory efforts working with stakeholders to art and science projects that we are conducting to really work with the local stakeholders, with people in cities to raising awareness of climate change and climate adaptation needs. Finally, the final presentation was a little bit different from Cristobal Reveco from Jerix. He's more who presented the upscaling initiative of the under the mission of adaptation that came up last year, and there's a lot of discussion about upscaling issues, and which is not say a city typical issue, but it's an overarching topic for climate services, how to upscale climate services. What are the problems here? Limited funding, lack of business models, poor governance architecture. There are multiple deficits in climate services that we should address, and hopefully the standardization process will also help in this context to a better scalability of climate services in the future. So overall, to sum up, the presentation showed that there's often quite a lot of information around, but it's often if it comes to say the local needs, the local users in urban areas, it's not often not understandable before the targeted audience. There's often the lack of scalability and fragmentation. There is the need for open and free access of data, which was often emphasized, in particular also in Southern Europe, and the need for multi-level governance was also emphasized by the speakers. So with this, I'd like to thank all the contributors in that session for these broad and interesting new views on initiatives, in particular involving local people in urban areas for climate for implementing climate adaptation and mitigation. Thank you.
Thanks, Andreas. Yes, it was great to hear such a wide range of projects and initiatives that are ongoing in Europe. So that was brilliant. Thanks. Okay, so now moving on to session 4. Susan Syed from DWD will provide an overview of the main points, which essentially the session provided an overview of the climate digital twin. So over to you, Susan. Thanks.
Yes. Hello, I'm Susan Syed from DWD, and it was really a pleasure to moderate yesterday's last session. So our session aimed to inform about a Destination Earth initiative called Climate Change Adaptation Digital Twin, short Climate DT, and the different capabilities the digital twin has to offer, but also collect users' needs when it comes to climate services. Novel capabilities were presented by Jenny Kontkanen from CSC. She's the project manager of this project. And these capabilities include, for example, the global high-resolution simulations and the novel workflow. So this workflow brings the really high complex data from the models that can usually only be interpreted by experts directly to the end user in the form of actionable climate information. And for this, my other colleagues, Karl Hartig, Suraj Polade, and Francesco Atasterias, Aparna Chandradeska, gave some very enlightening short talks, and they presented our 4 impact sector use cases. These use cases focus on renewable energy management, disaster risk management, and also water management. And they also introduced the new capability of integrating so-called what-if scenarios. And we are glad that the audience got engaged in interactive polls throughout the whole session, actually. And they were also coming up with their own ideas of very interesting what-if scenarios for their research fields. For example, how can specific land use changes or flood protection measures increase or decrease flood risks in my area? And this information can really help planners and decision makers to adapt to to a changing climate on a local level. One other thing that we're really pleased about is that the new functionality of so-called storyline simulations was very well received by the audience. And there was also a lively exchange of ideas. For those who don't know, Catherine Grayson from BSc introduced the storyline simulations. These simulations can reconstruct extreme weather events under different climate conditions in the past, in the present, or in the future. So we can answer questions like, what if Paris 2019 heat wave had occurred in a 2 degrees warmer world? And this approach really enables researchers, policymakers, and emergency responders to explore how climate change is reshaping those extreme events. And again, here the audience has come up even with their own ideas about which extreme events they would like to explore with the help of storyline simulations. So this was really nice to see. And last thing, what was really interesting was that we asked the audience at the beginning on their knowledge about this Climate DT project, and about 80% had never heard of it or is only slightly familiar with the vision. And at the end of the session, we asked a similar question again, asking how would you like to interact with the Climate DT in the future? And the majority was now thinking, I would actually like to start using the data or even the climate information system to support decision making in the future. And this really shows us that we need to keep working on co-design, on effective user engagement, to raise awareness, and to also improve the connection between the complex models and the decision making, and so to improve our climate system. So yeah, that was my recap of yesterday's last session.
Thanks so much, Susan. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was very different to the other sessions, very interactive, getting the audience involved, and I'm really glad you got some useful insights from the surveys. Great. Okay, so now I'll move on and bring in Marina Baldacera Pachetti, a colleague of mine from BSc and also at UCL as well, and she'll share some highlights from session 5 that focused on how to consider equity when developing climate services.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Sam. Well, we just had the session, so I'll be brief. Hopefully all of you were able to listen in and enjoy the conversation that we had on equity in and of climate services. So our session was divided into two parts. The first one where we had an introduction to the theme by two other colleagues of ours from Climate Europe 2, Werner Kraus and Grit Martinez, that gave us a bit of a taste of what it is that we think about when we think of equitability in and of climate services. So, for example, how different stakeholders can be engaged in these knowledge-making processes and how this is embedded in like governance and political structures. So, for example, like permanent citizen parliaments, outreach to vulnerable groups, or gardening in a decolonial setting. And relatedly, like the sort of issues that come in policy setting and governance when and climate governance when we're thinking about different countries that have a different political past or a different political history. For example, the European outermost regions that are sort of related by European governance or tied to European governance, but are well located in not in proximity to the European mainland, and have usually a long history of colonization, and how these are still perpetuated today in various decision-making processes, in particular related to climate change mitigation and adaptation. The second part was a panel discussion. We had really interesting contributions from both the academic and the research side, and national meteorological and hydrological services. We tackled 4 questions. We had 5, but we only managed to get to 4, which I think is a testament to the rich discussion we had. We discussed how and who is included and excluded in climate service provision and production, and whose interests are represented. We then also talked about different kinds of partnerships, especially between national hydrological and meteorological services and other stakeholders like universities, local communities, activists, and the private sector, and how that can contribute to a more equitable community. And then finally, we talked about the risks of regulation and governance for the equitability of climate services. So some of the key takeaways that we had from this session is that we really need to recognize that science and climate services are embedded in our political systems and do inherit their power structures and inequalities. And I think Werner concluded that pretty nicely at that, saying that as a consequence, social sciences and humanities are crucial ingredients along physical and biological sciences to support equitable climate services by including the social and political dimension of knowledge production and delivery. And one of the questions sort of touched on that, and like, for example, how can we include social vulnerability indicators to other sort of physical climate variables that can help us address this kind of problem. And we had a bit of a discussion about how that can be done and how that can be included, for example, in climate services, especially by the National Hydrological and Meteorological Society. Relatedly, we should also be really aware of how political forces may work against the production and the delivery of critical information provided by climate services, for example, through the spread of misinformation. So, for example, if we are producing an early warning system, how can that sort of be effective despite for example, misinformation around like the effects of climate change and the sources of the causes of the increase in extreme weather events. We also need to be aware that the inclusion of different and underserved stakeholders is dependent on the extent to which climate services take this task in earnest. So in a sense, like this is usually embedded maybe within the policies and the structures of these services and governance structures, but these need to be also taken seriously to be effective. And sometimes we really need to reflect critically on how effective these are, especially if we think about how they are embedded, how sometimes like these structures are still embedded in structures that are systemically unequal. We ended up talking about governance because this kept creeping up in our discussions, and governance structures are a very important component of climate services, right? So they can hinder innovation and fast response to critical challenges such as climate change, but in some cases they can accelerate innovation and action by acting as a connecting element between different initiatives. Relatedly, it was really highlighted several times that while we need to have like democratic processes really embedded in all of these structures, we really also need leadership and flexibility in order to be able to sort of respond to the challenges as they come up. And in particular, we really need to build system resilience through local and regional networks to be able to withstand political shocks that undermine efforts to build an equitable climate service community, right? And that threaten an implementation of climate services, especially those climate services that target the most vulnerable. And we discussed some of the current events and current initiatives and current sort of threats to sort of knowledge systems that we have. Yeah, and that was it. Just thanks again for.
No, I mean, you say that was it. It was incredibly rich discussion, and you covered a lot of ground. So yeah, it was very impressive, and I thought you and the panelists did a great job there, and covered a lot of ground. Like I said, very interesting topic, and I think certainly you would agree, you know, a lot more work to be done in that area, but hopefully there are some sprinklings of you know, hope there and ideas that hopefully we can move forward. I guess the key thing is reflection and self-reflection. We can all do a bit of that when it comes to equity and power structures that are surrounding us always. Great. Okay, thanks, Marina. So now to guide us through the next steps in the Climate Europe 2 project, give you a bit of an idea of what we're up to in the project, I'd like to invite back Sun to share some insights of what lies ahead for us. Thanks, Sun.
Thank you, Sam. Well, I mean, the first thing I wanted to say is that our next steps are already ongoing, in the sense that we have all of us who work in the project and who have attended and participated in the rich discussions yesterday and today are taking very detailed notes about everything that we hear, because that's the critical issue. We need to be able to interact with the community, with different actors in the public and in the private sector, and not only academics, in order to guide us going forward. The project is right like in the middle at the moment of its life cycle. Let's put it that way. And we are going to continue with our work plan, obviously exploring closely very technical issues related to climate data and information, interacting with the community, with the scientists, understanding the existing governance landscape, what is already there, what are the gaps, and identify topics that can be further harvested from both science and practitioner and the actual delivery of climate services that are known and that are important, so we can bring this in. to the goals of standardization and further research. Issues such as the provenance, the uncertainty quantification, the role of storylines, and many other topics that this group of people working on climate data and information are exploring. We are also going to explore within the next months the better understanding of the market of climate services, and again, by the market is public and private, not only private. We need to we will continue working on identifying quality principles, but doing that through understanding the needs of market actors, both public and private, and interacting with the community, so we can actually understand what are good practices and what can be malpractices. Climate Europe 2 is also concerned with a better understanding of the existing business models for climate services, their sustainability, the possibility for upscaling, and the potential trade-offs that this may have with the importance of ensuring that climate services remain, for many, as we have heard today from many of you, as a public good. And also, there is going to be ongoing exploration on the value of climate services, the sources of the value of climate services for different actors, both from the provision and the user side. The local aspects are fundamental, and I think that many of the discussions here bear witness of that concern. We need to ensure that locality is understood, but also the existing policy and political context, and understanding what are those policy needs and the best ways to build capacity to ensure that climate services really deliver what they need to deliver in an efficient manner, and that they are actually sustainable in the long term. We do that as here today through continuous engagement, through all sorts of qualitative methodologies, but also through events like this one and like the forthcoming festival, which we will hear more details in a minute, by ensuring that we harvest the information from all of you, and perhaps most importantly, that we actually are able to reach out to all the different actors to create those partnerships. I think one of the speakers in the equitability session was talking about partnerships being the different actors being different branches of a tree. I really love that metaphor. And that means that Climate Europe 2 project is this year making a very strong effort to reach out to private providers. And we are also going to be hosting an in-person festival in the city of Belgrade in Serbia later this fall. You will hear the details. And the last piece of the project is the communication efforts through, again, also organizing blogs. You see the results of these communication products in many of the slides that the organizers are showing through blogs, through a podcast. We have many different dialogues with the specific actors. And we also, importantly, interact a lot with the existing community in Europe, but also outside Europe, of projects working on climate services. And we provide information, we learn from one another, and we engage directly with the missions as well, and the missions projects that are touching upon the topic of climate services. I would like to now say, so Climate Europe 2 this year has three important goals. The first one is about standardization of climate services. And many of you know, this is, I believe, public information, that the European standardization body, CENELEC, has already created a formal committee that is already taking on board and has the mandate to initiate the first standard for climate services, which will be focused on identifying the basics, questions related to terminology, questions related to principles, requirements, and to provide guidance. This ideally is going to be the first of several different types of standards. And the project Climate Europe 2 is centrally involved in these efforts that are about to kick off in the next weeks through the formal channels and the processes of all the standardization national bodies interacting through Sense and Elect, proper committee on climate change and focus on adaptation for the moment. And Climate Europe 2 has a liaison agreement with this committee. Therefore, we are going to be, again, harvesting all the information that we get from these interactions, benchmarking what we learn from all of you with the results of our own investigations, interactions, and research, and handing over the best of our knowledge to these committee members. We are also concerned with knowledge gaps. There remain quite a lot of knowledge gaps in many of the topics that I have said. And we are trying to identify what type of research needs are going to be necessary in the next years to move forward to build an appropriate climate services system for all European countries. And also, we are concerned with ensuring that our results are presented in an easy, accessible manner to policymakers and get back to the community to benchmark that. We have quite a lot of systems in place. We have a platform, we have a community. Please sign up to this community because we need to be able to, on an ongoing basis, benchmark what we learn with the community. Perhaps I want to conclude by simply saying that one of the things we are going to be doing also during 2025 is work together across all the different work packages. This is a very large consortium, using a set of common use cases of real world delivery of climate services to explore those requirements, to identify the principles, and to harvest from these real experiences as to what can be best practices, what should be standardized, what should not be standardized, etc. And again, we will continue to benchmark with the community, and also all this information will be synthesized and present back to you with sets of new key messages and also all the rich deliverables that this project is producing that you can find in our website. Let me conclude, Sam, with the example of the topic of equitability. I mean, here is a topic that has been under-researched, but the panel today has actually touched upon so many interesting things, and all of us are taking notes as to how now we can better understand this topic, and we feel a lot more empowered. I'm sure Marina and Werner and colleagues will agree with me to really move forward, because it was under research. We were really in need of really understanding what are the drivers and what are the challenges to ensure that we have an equitable climate services community, and also that equitability is brought directly into any efforts of standardization, which, as it has been said, is just one more form of governance. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hassan. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we've just scratched the surface, really, when it comes to equitability of climate services, and it's a topic that clearly needs much more work, as many of the other topics also raised in various sessions today. So yeah, I think that more or less brings the discussion of the Webstival to a close. Now, we'd really love to hear from you about your experiences in the last day and a half. And to facilitate this, Stacey, I believe you're with us. Yes, Stacey New from the UK Met Office will now lead kind of an interactive evaluation through a live poll. So yeah, over to you. I believe you have some slides.
Yes, thanks, Sam. Please don't run away with the mention of a Menti. It's going to be fun, I promise. So yeah, if you can scan the QR code on your screen or go to menti.com and input the code 33719456, that would be brilliant. That code is 33719456. So as Sam said, this is a chance for you, the community, to feed into the festival that's coming up and the Webstivals that we have planned, they are really for you. So it's we want your input into making them bigger and better. Thank you, Ariana. The code is in the chat. So I'll just give it a couple more seconds for people to join. So as you've all been listening so intensely over the last couple of days, there is a little bit of a celebration and a reward for you, and hope that you'll hopefully find fun. But just to note that this is anonymous throughout. One point during the slideshow that I've got, it might ask you to put in a name or something, but you can remain as Puffy the Pufferfish, and everything will make sense soon. But just to reiterate that it is anonymous, so don't worry. So let's kick off. Just to start with, I'd like you to help me plan my next holiday. No, I want you to suggest a city from your country. So it could be a country that you were born in or you currently work in, that you think everyone should visit. So I've got in the background, if you look at my screen, Bath, if you might recognize it in the UK. So this is one of my favorite cities that you might not have heard of. It's one of the great spa towns of Europe. And as you can probably tell, it's got a rich Roman heritage. So how cool, lots of suggestions there. A lot I haven't been to. Hamburg, going there in a couple of weeks to see Andreas. So take note of Hamburg. It will come up later in this slideshow, not to give anything away. Cool, so lots of suggestions there. Florence, Paris, lots that I've never been to, so this is great. Woodstock, Kilkenny, oh cool. Great, so that's just to get you started and to check that everyone can use Menti. So that's great. I'm going to move on now, just in the essence of time. So as I said, I'm going to treat you all with a quiz just to test your knowledge about European cities. So this is like a fastest finger first. So the faster you answer, the more points you get. On your phone or your laptop, you might get a little icon. So yesterday when I tried this, I had Puffy the Pufferfish, and that was just my name throughout. So you can keep that name, or you can put in your own name if you want eternal glory within the Climate Europe 2 community. But yeah, as I said, anonymous after this quiz. So let's kick off. So, oh, lots of you. I see Santa's made an appearance early on. So we've got 28 players ready. I'll just give it a couple more seconds just in case others want to join. 29. So it should be a bit of fun. We're not testing you. Cool. Right, I'm going to kick off. Okay, as I said, answer faster to get more points. So where is Europe's rainiest city? So we have Glasgow, Scotland, Milan, Italy, Bergen, Norway, or Brasov, Romania. So where do you think the rainiest city in Europe is? So it's Bergen. So 15 of you got that right. So Bergen in Norway is the rainiest city with the highest average number of rainiest days. So that's 12.7 per month, and a daily average amount of rainfall of 8.8 millimeters. So I was surprised it was at Glasgow when I put this together. It's Bergen. Let's see who is in the lead. Oh, it's very fast. So we've got Barefoot Contessa is the fastest so far. Okay, question number 2. Are you ready? Where is Europe's sunniest city? So we've got Alicante, Spain, Marseille, France, Lisbon, Portugal, or Sofia, Bulgaria. Where is the sunniest city in Europe? Oh, you're too good. Yes, Alicante. So with 349 hours of sunshine per month, it is the dream destination for those that love the sun. So roughly half of the day, every day, is sunny in Alicante. So I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but there we go. We'll see who's in the lead. Oh, I think Barefoot Contessa's lost their lead. Oh, Paco! I wonder who that could be. Okay, question 3. Where is the snowiest city in Europe? So where gets a lot of snow? Is it Helsinki, Innsbruck, Tallinn, or Riga? Oh, this was a tough one. So it's Tallinn. So Estonia's capital is the snowiest city in Europe with an average of 20.5 days of snow per month. So if you are a snow lover, you want to make your way to Estonia. Oh, Paco, you are maintaining your lead along with Beyonce. Very honoured to have Beyonce at the Webster. Cool. Last question. This is not weather related. I just thought I'd chuck in a random one. Which European city has the most bridges? Is it Venice, Amsterdam, London, or Hamburg? I told you Hamburg would pop up again. Okay, this was my favorite fact. So it is actually Hamburg. I thought it was Venice, and then obviously Amsterdam I thought of after, but Venice has 150 canals and has over 435 bridges. Amsterdam has over 1,200 bridges, and it is estimated that Hamburg has between 2,300 and 2,500 bridges. Don't come at me if you think this is wrong. It might start an interesting discussion, but I found a reputable source that said that Hamburg has indeed the most bridges. So yeah, I hope that was a bit of fun. I learned a lot. I hope you did. Let's see who the winner is. Whoa, Thunderstorm really came through right at the end. Well done. Beyonce second. As I said, it's an honor. But well done, Thunderstorm Willie. Great. So yeah, that was just a little reward for you being so attentive during the last couple of days. Now we're going to move on to grabbing your thoughts about the Websterval and how getting you to help us shape the next Websterval Festival. As I said, they're community events, so having your input is integral to making them bigger and better. So this won't take very long, I promise you, but if you can input and be as honest as possible, that would be amazing. So firstly, we're really interested in what motivated you to participate in this Websterval. So I think you can select multiple options. So we've got to learn about Climate Europe 2, to learn about climate service standardisation, to learn about mitigation adaptation in the cities. You might have been an invited speaker, so didn't have a choice, or other. And like, feel free to put if you have put other, to put your suggestions in the Q&A, and that would be really useful for us to look back on. So yeah, I'll give you a couple of seconds to fill this one in. So yeah, rather unsurprisingly, most people at the moment have come along to learn about mitigation and adaptation in cities, which is exactly what we wanted. That's why we theme these Webstervals. To learn about Climate Europe 2, which is great, to learn about standardisation, and you're an invited speaker. Thank you for being very honest. And as I said, there are a lot of you that said other, so if you want to put your suggestions in the chat for why you're attending, that would help us for the next Websterval. Okay, the second question. What did you like most about the Websterval? Feel free to put the quiz. Yeah, for me, I think personally, the equity session was amazing. The whole 2 days were amazing, but it's probably my favourite session. So if you could put what you liked most about the Websterval, it could be a speaker, a session that you liked the most, a presentation. I'll give you 30-ish seconds to kind of think about this. So for those that can't see the screen, we've got the morning sessions, new ideas shared, which is great, session on equity, panel discussions, adaptation and mitigation session, short talks, Werner. Werner's a great speaker, I agree. Insights from across the areas of research and practice, 2 presentations on the EU missions, attribution approach, the quiz. Thank you very much. Good discussions. Vanna again. Oh, Vanna, you're getting some love. Talk about storylines. Yeah, I agree. The storyline session was very good. The professional diversity of contributors. Yeah, great. It was great to have a lot of diversity within the speakers. So great. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next question. So what is or are the key messages that you will take home for the Webstaval? So what one thing, or there might have been multiple things that have really kind of resonated with you or stuck with you that you will take from the Webstaval? I'll give you 30 seconds again to have a think about this. It's all complicated, very true. Need to discuss policy influence. Yep, a common theme throughout a lot of the work we do in climate services around policy. Yep, the importance of climate service governance, climate service mitigation. Oh, cool, that's nice to hear. So someone's going to implement the storyline studies. That's great. Mitigation and adaptation needs to be balanced. The EU is already working on climate services standards. That's great. Climate services are embedded in political structures. Importance of climate services. That's a good one for us. Need to adjust to local stakeholder needs. Yeah, the future is not bright. We're going to help it be brighter. As a community, we can help the future be brighter. Policies, awareness, climate service is a very broad issue that requires many perspectives. Very true. Collaboration, engaging city stakeholders and design of climate services is essential to let climate services meet the needs of the end users. And there are many bridges to cross. I like the link to the quiz, intentional or not. But, oh no, okay. Perhaps more than there on the city of Hamburg. I love it. Thank you. More platforms for dialogue. Yeah, and that's what we're hoping to do with Climate Europe is, create these platforms for dialogue and engagement and bringing the community together. So yeah, thank you for all those suggestions. Just have one last question, and that is, what would you like to see included at the next Webstaval and festival? So this could be a particular topic, so maybe like agriculture, or it could be things that we could do to improve. So maybe yesterday was too long for you, or you would rather have half-day sessions, or maybe you would like a little bit more, I don't know, art and science. So you want a poetry session. It can be as wild and wacky as you want, and it can be as honest as you want. So if you really didn't like something during the Webstaval, please let us know, and that will help us make the next editions bigger and better. So spread out over multiple days to avoid a very long day filled with online sessions. Yep. Mobile phone-based climate service to vulnerable people. Very good. More small group discussions. Yeah, it's definitely something we can look at doing. So we've done breakout rooms in previous Webstavals. That works very well. Case studies, gaming and psychology. Yes, that's right up my alley. Board games, interactive sessions. I loved it. Yesterday was too long. More representatives from businesses and civil society, more in integration of climate services with other data and information, listen to users, gamification of sessions. Yes. Oh, thank you. Stacey had ice breaking. Breaking the ice very late on this Webstaval. More participative activities, tongue-tied. Maybe sort of sessions, more agriculture, yeah, step-by-step case studies, more diversity in speakers in regards to equity, marginalised groups involved. So yeah, these are all things that we can work on for sure. Great. So I think you can still contribute to that whilst I wrap up. So yeah, thank you so much for staying with the Menti with me. I know it's been a long couple of days, but it's been great. It's been a great 2 days, and thank you to all the speakers and to my fellow consortium members. And I will now hand over to Libitsa, who has some exciting news regarding the festival, and hopefully we'll see you all in the festival and the next Webstaval. So yeah, thank you all. I will stop sharing.
Thanks, Stacey. Yeah, Lubitsa, are you there? Just checking you can
Yes.
Excellent. There you are. Excellent.
Hi.
So I believe you've got some slides to share
Yes.
to tell us a bit more about the upcoming festival in Belgrade. Is that right?
I will just let me see if is everything okay with sharing. It is perfect.
Looks
Okay.
good.
Works, yeah. Good. Thank you, Sam. Yes, and hello, everybody. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Center for the Promotion of Science of the Republic of Serbia, which is actually a public body dedicated to bridging the gap between science and society, science promotion and communication. And through our previous work on numerous scientific projects, we have built expertise and connections, particularly in the areas of climate literacy. So our mission is to make climate-related topics more accessible to the public and stakeholders across the region. And in relation to that, our role in the Climate Europe 2 project is on developing the community. And I will present you this slide later on, which is related to that. So yes, to develop the community, collaborate with industry, science, NGOs throughout Southeast Europe, as to improve understanding of climate services, which is actually a concept that remains relatively unknown in this region. So our goal is to foster a community in order to be able to understand different needs and to contribute to the standardization of these services. And in relation to that, a year ago, in March 2024, Climate Europe 2 organized the first festival in Venice, after which we begin with the roadshow, which is traveling climate action throughout different countries, 10 countries in the Southeast Europe region. So the roadshow promotes climate services by combining art and science in different ways, shapes, forms, approaches. And over the course of 2024, it was held in 5 countries in the region, which is Rijeka, Croatia, Tirana, Albania, Kotor in Montenegro, Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Skopje in North Macedonia. Different sessions were held and events organized promoting the topics of climate services, but also opening several calls for new art and science works, which is an innovative approach to climate services and climate action. And I'm saying all of this because this is actually in relation to our next step. And I'm actually here to announce the second Climate Europe 2 Festival, which will take place in Belgrade, Serbia, from September 29th to 1st of October. So the 3 days festival, the festival will serve as a hub for the region, bringing together experts and different stakeholders in the field of climate services and representatives from Southeast Europe, which is, as I mentioned, actually on the area where this topic is, let's say, underrepresented, underdeveloped, and our wish is to change that. So this 3-day festival will feature panels with stakeholders from the region as well as Europe and different forms of innovative art and science work related to climate services, including the one selected in the second Climate Europe 2 Art and Science Open Call, which will be premiered at the festival. So this is a multidisciplinary installation of French artist Arnaud Lafon, which will be developed actually in the following months with the scientific community and premiered at the festival in Belgrade, alongside the winner of the previous open call, the art and science work called Milana, and actually many more. So I would like to invite you to mark your calendars for the Belgrade Festival. So the dates are 29th of September and until 1st of October. There is more info on the Climate Europe 2 website about the dates and the location, and more info about the festival itself will come in the following months. But the point is that this is the opportunity to engage with global experts, share knowledge and insights, to explore how art and science can address climate action and understanding the needs of different stakeholders. And I encourage you to join the community and be part of all this. So please scan this QR code that you see on your screen for more information and updates and to be part of our community. So very briefly, that would be all for now about the festival and our future steps. We will keep you updated. So thank you for your attention, and we look forward in seeing you all in Belgrade.
Thanks so much, Ljubica. So what from one event to another, I believe Yaro Miziak is here also to promote maybe an upcoming event. Is it next month or later in the month?
Yeah, it's actually in a couple of weeks. So thank you very much, Sam. Thank you all colleagues who provided an overview. Thank you, Stacy, for the engaging exercise. That was really nice. And just to complement what Lubica announced, the next festival will be in Belgrade. That will be in September and October. That means that the virtual festival like this one, the next one will only take place in March 2026. But you know, we know that you are looking into opportunities to learn and interact with other colleagues working on climate services. So we will provide a alternative forums for looking into sharing the insight from application of climate services in different fields. So there is we have also the series of webinars to which you are very kindly invited. But we have also, as an umbrella coordination and supporting action in Europe, we have also this task to put to your attention additional opportunities. And one of those will take place exactly in 2 weeks. And this is the User Climate Predictions Forum, which will take place from 25th to 27th. It will consist of 3 sessions. Each day there will be basically a session lasting for 90 minutes in the afternoon. So we can go to the next slide, please. This forum is really a wonderful opportunity to engage, to learn from colleagues working on climate services and climate simulation and modeling. The forum is split into 3 sessions. On the Thursday, on Tuesday, 25th of March, in the early afternoon, we will convey a session to the community of interest. And the community of interest is defined as anybody who would like to learn about what the climate forecast or predictions are, what is their value, how they can be used for policy and decision making or for business contingency strategies. So this session does not require any technical knowledge of climate forecast. So you will learn about what is the state of the art of modeling and providing climate predictions. And also you will be able to start thinking about whether it makes sense for you to use them. The second session, that will be on Wednesday, 26th of March, again, the same time slot, is going to cover the community of practice. And this is the session to which you should connect if you are interested in more technical stuff. So if you have some knowledge and some experience from using climate predictions, you will learn much more about what has been done, what is being planned to be done, and what you can expect. Also, what kind of data you can already access through the aspect initiatives that is also funded from Horizon Europe. And finally, on Thursday, the 27th of March, exactly the same time, we will be organizing a marketplace. So this is open to everybody, right? It's whether you are a user of climate services, whether you are provider of services. It's a sort of matchmaking. So we will discuss about what kind of services are in place and how easy is it for them to extend a service with climate forecast. And then we will have a panel looking into users, and that's connected especially to those regions and communities that have received cascading grants from mission adaptation to improve their climate risk assessment. But it's really open to anyone. So if you would like to know more specifically, if you are looking for a partner for somebody who could help you to start using climate forecast, so this is the place to be and the session to visit. So this is the climate prediction user forum taking place in a couple of weeks. There will be more opportunities that we will flag out on our website. As I mentioned, there are interesting webinars and agenda that we are proposing. But we will be also at the ECA conference, European Climate Change Adaptation Conference, from 16th to 18th of June in Rimini in Italy, and in a number of other places where you can, meet us and speak to us. And definitely we look forward to see you all in Belgrade at the end of September and beginning of October. So with that, thank you very much, Sam, for giving me a couple of minutes to introduce this, and back to you. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Yaro. Yeah, lots of opportunities for you all to engage with the climate services community in Europe. That's great. Okay, so we're coming, very close to the end now, just the remaining sort of 10-15 minutes. So to really officially close the Webstival, I'd like to bring back Paco, the project coordinator, who will share some final reflections. Over to you, Paco.
Okay, thanks very much, Sam. We might even finish before the scheduled time, and I'm sure that everyone will be happy to get 10 more minutes back to live. I want to start by thanking all the colleagues that have made the Webstival possible once more. There is a lot of people behind the organization of these events. Lots of them work over several weeks to make sure that the agenda is prepared, that the sessions really make sense, that there is a thread that is connecting some of them as clearly as possible. And also there are the colleagues at CMCC who are ensuring that all the technical details are taken into account, and that the whole event is actually taking place in a smooth way. And as we can see, it has been a success once more, I want to say. The event is recorded, and you'll be able to find it in the Climate Europe 2 YouTube channel. There is a lot of additional information that you can find in the Climate Europe 2 website, for instance, concerning the events that Yaro and Ljubica were referring to. There is you can find them in the Climate Europe 2 website, where if you go to the events section, you'll find these events, also the workshop, the sectoral workshop that Asun was referring to for climate services private providers, the Climate Europe 2 Festival. So this is a one-stop shop for all these different events, plus the one that Yaro referred to. If you want to find the link and register for the Aspect User Forum, ECA 2025 as well, that will take place this summer, and also other events like the Magica Summer School. So this is just one illustration of the spirit in Climate Europe 2 that is on one side to work hard to prepare these recommendations for the standardization of climate services, while we support climate services community in Europe, but also to offer a platform for many other European and national projects and other activities like the mission on climate adaptation, and also mission in cities, to have a voice and to get together to discuss aspects related to climate services that are relevant to their activities. So the Webstival, as we explained yesterday, is not a forum it's not an event to promote the Climate Europe 2 achievements and results, but it's a platform for many different people in the community to get together and to share views and to learn from each other. This is fundamental, along with many other activities in Climate Europe 2, like the festival, the different workshops, the questionnaires, interviews that are being carried out to gather all the relevant material that we have to take into account before providing these recommendations to Sensenelec and the Commission. So if you see in any other in any other framework. A reference to Climate Europe 2 activities, bear in mind that there will be for sure part of a coordinated, much more ambitious initiative to try to reflect everything that the community considers that is fundamental to take into account when it comes to standardizing climate services. And with these words, and an additional thank to all the attendants during these 2 days, I would like to close the event and encourage everyone to join the network, to also visit the YouTube channel with the events, the recordings from the previous Webstivals, to have a look at the messages that you can also find in the Climate Europe 2 website that were presented by Yasun on the first day, and provide us with as much feedback as you can, in particular if you disagree, and in particular if you are aware of use cases that are important to take into account, particularly because they worked against the initial plans, and they basically present lessons that we have to learn from things that didn't work. So get in touch with us, even if you think that what you're doing or your experience might not be that relevant to us. Still, it will be something that we can learn from. So on that note, thank you very much, and see you either in Belgrade or at the next Webstival in March 2026. Thank you, and bye-bye.